Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures. I'm Big Lee, and this week I want to talk about illuminating your paint desk. The joys of painting historical miniatures. Few things in life are quite so rewarding and so eye straining as squinting over a 28mm figure trying to paint a crisp crossbelt or a tiny Shako plume without accidentally giving your Fusilier a third eye. If you're anything like me, you've probably noticed that the passage of time has gifted you many things: wisdom, patience, good looks, a solid collection of paintbrushes, and the slow but steady betrayal of your once eagle-eyed vision. These days, if I drop a figure on the floor, I need a full-scale lighting operation to find the damn thing. There's something faintly absurd about reaching a point in life where you need nearly as much kit to see the figure as you do to paint it. But absurd or not, it's really a reality for many of us, especially those of us who have been in the hobby for more years than they care to count. The long evenings spent hunched over a desk, paintbrush in one hand and model in the other, haven't changed much since my younger days. What has changed, however, is my ability to spot the difference between dark grey and black without lighting that would make a theatre technician weep with envy. So this week I wanted to talk lighting. Not just any lighting, mind you. This is the serious business of illuminating your hobby desk to paint historical miniatures like a demigod of colour accuracy and detail. If you're still relying on the same dusty desk lamp you inherited from your student days, you may be doing your latest regiment a disservice. Lighting isn't about just seeing what you're doing, it's about how you see what you're doing, and it can make a surprising difference to the results of your paint jobs. So first, let's clear up a common misconception. When people talk about brightness, they often refer to the wattage of a bulb, because that's what we all grew up with. Remember the days when a 60-watt light bulb lit a room and a 100-watt light bulb could roast a chicken if left on for too long? Well, these days, those days are long gone. Wattage is just a measure of how much power a bulb uses. How much light it gives off is a different matter. What you really want to look at is lumens. Lumens measure the amount of visible light a source emits. The higher the lumens, the brighter the light. A typical old school 60-watt incandescent bulb gives you about 800 lumens. And let me tell you, 800 lumens isn't what it used to be, especially when you're trying to paint piping on a hussar's jacket. Now, for those of us who've reached a certain age where menus in dim restaurants might as well be printed in runes, brightness is just the start. There's also the matter of colour temperature. Now, this is measured in kelvins, and it determines whether your light has a warm yellowish tint like candlelight or classic incandescent bulbs, or a cool bluish one like daylight or many LEDs. Warm lights are typically around 2700 Kelvin to 3000 Kelvin, neutral white is about 4000 Kelvin to 4500, and daylight lamps go up to about 6500 Kelvins. But why does this matter to the historical wargamer hunched over a table, brush in hand? Because light temperature affects how you perceive colours. A warm bulb might make your carefully blended red coats look more orange than intended, while a cool daylight bulb can wash out those subtle greens you mixed with such loving care. Under the wrong lighting, a figure that looked superb at the desk can look oddly jaundiced or strangely dull when seen in natural daylight. Or worse, on camera when you post it online to show it off. A warm light may feel cosy, but it's not doing your Prussian blue any favours. On the other hand, a daylight balanced bulb at around 4500 to 5000 kelvins can help you see things much closer to how they'll appear in normal daylight. In short, better lighting equals better results. But it's not just about having light, it's about having the right light in the right place. One overhead bulb won't cut it unless you're trying to create dramatic noir shadows across your workbench. You need directional lighting that brings out the sculpted details and lets you see what your brush is doing from all angles. And this brings us to the types of lamps that are most useful for painters. Now, the good news is that modern technology has blessed us with lots of options. The bad news is that choosing between them can sometimes feel like you're shopping for a car when all you want is something that turns on when you poke it. You've got your classic angle poise lamp, the type that we had when we were young. These are much beloved for their flexibility and retro charm, but often not the brightest. Some people still swear by halogen lamps, although they do run hotter than a cannonball fresh from the barrel. They also use a lot more electricity for those energy conscious painters out there. So the modern alternative is an LED bulb. LED arm lamps that clip to your desk offer cool running, high lumens and sometimes adjustable colour temperatures. They look vaguely like the sort of thing dentists use, but if you're good enough for someone rooting around in molars, it's certainly good enough for you delicately painting French cuffs. Then there are ring lights, beloved by influencers and mini painters alike, which offer even more shadow reducing light. They can be great if positioned well, though they're not ideal for on their own, since they can leave you feeling like you're trying to paint through a hula hoop. I've got one myself, and while it's excellent for taking photos, I found it too awkward for actual painting with. And then we get things like these, the craft type lamps, fold up lamps with adjustable heads so that they can bring the light in from the side. Again, relatively cheap, very easily available both online and at craft stores. And finally, for the mad geniuses or simply the visually betrayed among us, there are overhead softbox lights, massive photo studio style contraptions that flood your entire workspace with glorious retina waking illumination. Not only do these eliminate harsh shadows, but they also make it feel like your paint station has ascended to the next plane of reality. These are perhaps more commonly found in photography studios or YouTube setups, including mine. Mine, in fact, is in front of me. It's movable and is currently up here in front of me recording me for this recording. But more and more hobbyists like me are also turning them over to for their light drenching potential and putting them over their desks. So all of this brings you to my own setup, which I'll admit is a little extreme. But necessity, as they say, is the mother of invention, and in my turn, the father of lumens. I use two angled lamps positioned at 45 degrees above my desk, one on the left, one on the right. Each is fitted with an 800 lumen tube, balanced at around 5,500 kelvins, which gives a lovely crisp white light for my desk. That alone would probably be fine for many painters, but of course I have to take things to a completely ridiculous next level. So as mentioned earlier, I have this studio softbox for making these videos, but when it's not being used for creating content for YouTube, I move it and put it over here and position it above my paint desk. And let me tell you, 4,500 lumen daylight bulbs are a game changer. It bathes the entire desk in beautifully diffuse shadow-free light. I no longer lose details in gloom or strain to see the fine detail on a tricorn. Shadows practically zero, squinting a thing of the past, and I haven't accidentally mistaken a dark brown for black in years, which, as any painter of British infantry will tell you, is nothing short of miraculous. Now sure, my setup may resemble a small TV studio or the lair of someone about to perform microsurgery, but by Jove it works. The clarity is astonishing, the colours are true, and I can paint for hours without feeling like my eyes are about to give up and go on strike. And really, when you're putting this much time and love into painting your miniatures, it seems only fair to give your eyes the best tools that you can. Of course, everyone's workspace is different. Not everyone has the room or the desire to install an overhead light that can probably be seen from low orbit. But good lighting really is one of the best upgrades you can make to your painting setup. Right up there with a decent chair, a good quality sable brush, and in some cases magnification. For me, the illumination needs a little bit of backup. I've used cheap reading glasses in the past to help bring the details into sharper, crisper focus. They did the job mostly until I found myself leaning closer and closer until my nose was practically touching figures. These days I've embraced something a little bit more precise, shall we say. I now wear some magnifying overspecs which fit over my current glasses. They're not exactly steampunk, they're not jeweller's loops, they're just enough to give me that little extra clarity, and they sit comfortably over my normal glasses, and the difference is like going from a foggy morning into a crisp winter's day. Suddenly the braid on the cuirassier's jacket is no longer a guess, it's a thread I can see. So combined with all that glorious light, it means I can paint longer with more confidence and with far fewer mistakes. If you've ever mispainted an entire crossbelt because your eyes thought it was part of the tunic, you'll understand what a difference this can make. So what about you? I'd love to know what your painting setup looks like. Have you had to upgrade your lighting as the years roll by? Do you rely on one trusty lamp, or have you constructed a glorious fortress of lumens like mine? And have you, like me, reached for the reading specs or embraced the world of magnification? So share your secrets and your setups. We're all here together, squinting at shakos and buttons, trying to make the past come to life in miniature form, one tiny soldier at a time. As always, I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. So time for a hobby update. I got back from my holiday last week, so I've had a week to try and catch up and hit the ground running as far as I can. Monday saw the rejects gather online for our normal weekly paint and chat session, and I got cracking with my latest batch of Cossack models. I had started preparing them before I went away, but I didn't have time to do anything else with them, so I've just started on them this week. Again, I haven't had a lot of time, as we'll see in a second. I'm plugging away and I'm hoping to get a little bit more done this weekend. Then on Tuesday night, my D&D group assembled online with the aid of Zoom, of course, because we're scattered to the four winds, for the continuation of our ongoing D&D campaign, which I think we've been playing for 3 or 4 years now. Great evening, a lot of fun, and a lot of the usual banter to while the evening away. And then on Wednesday evening, I took part in another podcast, this time with Rob Poyton for his channel Dragon's Teeth Gaming. Now, at the point of recording, that took place yesterday, and his podcast has now been edited and has just gone up literally an hour or so ago on the Thursday night. Obviously, this video comes out on Sunday, so it'll add a few days circulating around. But what I will do is I'll make sure I'll put links to the Dragon's Tooth Gaming page, and also to that particular episode of the podcast. I'll put that in the description below. Please go over. He's a lovely chap. We had a really good evening chatting. Not quite as long as the podcast me and Ray did with Ken a few weeks ago, so perhaps a little bit more consumable. And we discussed the future of Wargaming. Now, I may turn some of what I was talking about into a video in a few weeks' time. I'm having to think about that because it's a subject that I keep talking about and have brought up in various forums. So I'm just trying to decide whether there's enough fresh material to turn it into a Sunday topic, or whether I'm just repeating something I've already said. So I'm giving that some thought. As always, if you've got an idea for a topic for me to discuss on a Sunday, please let me know in the comments below. Put it in the form of a question, because then I can find it. And I'll be more than happy to add it to my list and see if I can work up some of the suggestions you make into Sunday videos. Coming up with a topic is often very difficult. And in fact, one of the things I mentioned in the podcast was something that I've been doing recently. I've been using AI to give me suggestions for potential topics. Now, 99% of the suggestions are rubbish, but you might get one and go, actually, I can do something with this. And so from a one sentence suggestion of a topic, I can work up an outline and go, right, I think this has got legs. But I'd much rather be doing a Sunday video based on a real question from a real person. So if you've got a topic or a question you'd like to ask me, like me to address in one of my Sunday videos, please, like I say, drop me a line in the comments below, and I'll try my best to come to that question and turn it into one of my videos. So that's it for this week. As always, please join the conversation in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe and share. It really does boost the channel and help grow it. And if you want to keep up to date with weekly content from the channel, please tap the bell notification icon. So until next week, stay safe, keep gaming, and of course, keep rolling high.